What's up, everybody? Probably going to start hitting 2 podcasts a week. So this is the second one for this week. Not sure when you're going to get it on iTunes. Actually, I am sure. It's, I believe, June 28th. And today, what I'm going to go over is the unconventional training principles in Newell Strength. Now that I've really dove back into the training and the program design after a long time not doing it. Excuse me, I'll get some water. Thirsty after jiu-jitsu. Sweat up a storm in there. But I want to go over, after some of the clients were asking me about rest periods and whatnot, I'm going to go over the training principles. And for our clients, they'll be getting individual lessons, I should say private lessons, to their email once or twice a month with a lot of these concepts. So the training philosophy I developed, well, I guess it started way back in 95, 96 when I was training for high school football, and we had Coach Reefy, who was our strength coach at the time. And this is back in the day before coaches couldn't push you that hard at the school setting, and they couldn't really just drive you into the ground in a good way. And Reefy used to crush us. And I remember I was a freshman, but being there with the seniors, not really knowing what I was doing, but running like 18 200s to the point where you're puking. So that foundation was set for me at a very early time. So what we're talking about, that's 27 years ago, of just the intensity that you need to train with. That was also the time when we started dabbling around with creatine way back in the day, so that was pretty cool. Then 1997 is when I really took a liking to training, like doing it without having to do it because it was mandatory. In 1997, really reading all the bodybuilding magazines, training with my buddies that were really into lifting and bodybuilding. In 1998, I got my first mail order book, which is a full body principle, big beyond belief, which I've spoken about many times. I have upstairs in my library. It's a treasure for me. In understanding the stress adaptation to training, one of the things that really stuck out was neurological recruitment. And moving the body through space is always more effective than sitting on a machine and moving an implement towards your body or away from your body. By far, not even close. You can use machines for bodybuilding purposes, or if you have stability issues, or if hypertrophy is the only goal, we could incorporate that stuff, but far better to move your body through space. And I would spend hours in the gym back in the day at that time just experimenting, following the program at Big Beyond Belief, which I did for a number of years, even when I went off to college in 1999 to the University of Delaware, training like nobody else in the gym. They would look at me like I was crazy because I'm training full body. I'm going at a fast pace. What is this guy doing? But I got super strong at that point. The first summer of training, I'm not going to go over nutrition today, but that was a big piece, and I've got a whole bunch of stories. Maybe I'll make that the next podcast or one of the podcasts next week. Let me make note of that. The early days of my nutrition. But I would many times, I knew it was very difficult to put on muscle, but I would many times eat to the point of vomiting. Not on purpose, but I knew I had to push it. So I had that mentality early on. The training principles, so I'll start out with the rest period question. I like to train at or near anaerobic and anabolic thresholds. Let me repeat that, and then I'll explain it. I like to train at or near anaerobic, which means without oxygen, and anabolic thresholds, anabolic growth. That's what that means. So anaerobic means without oxygen. So as far as your rest, I don't care what you're training for, unless you're going for 1 rep max, something that you haven't done, you should be pushing the pace. Rest periods should be minimal. If you could have a conversation with somebody again, you should be going. That's what I believe. And that's what's worked throughout the years. For many, many people that we have trained, that I've trained abroad, all over the world, through questions and whatnot, at or near anaerobic and anabolic thresholds. So you're pushing maximal relative weights. So you're not always going to be maxing out. That's not possible. And you should be pushing the anaerobic threshold. Again, if you can breathe and have a conversation, you should have already begun. So for most people, that answers the question. Your rest period is your transition period. Now, when you're doing the workouts correctly, even if they look simple, they should kick your butt. And I know because I do them myself, and I know how they should be applied, and I know what they should feel like. This is going to be different if you are It's going to be different. I'll explain that in a second. If you're a novice trainee or an advanced trainee, it's all relative, but you should still be training for what we call fast training, PHAST, peripheral heart action strength training. I want blood pumping head to toe. What drives the cardiovascular system is your muscular system. The more muscle you work in an anaerobic and anabolic threshold, right at that cusp, the more cardiovascular effect you're going to get. So that's first thing. Movement first. You should be moving well first. Don't not be able to get into the bottom position of a squat and then try to add weight to your squat. Work on getting into that bottom position of a squat. That's one of the 4 keys to youth anyhow. So movement first, and then we add strength on top of that. So movement first. Many ways we can do that. I'm not going to go into specifics right now. I just want to get across the message of our training philosophy. And this might, if you're an advanced strength coach or you've studied under us, or you're one of my buddies around the country, this might not seem that unconventional to you. And I don't care what the textbooks say. I always take experience and direct knowledge over textbooks every day of the week. And much of what I've learned is through experimentation under my strength training mentors, Jay Butler, big influence on me back in 2003, interning with him and how we trained the football players at Rutgers. Scott Abel, unbelievable coach, helped me in many ways, but as far as the strength training, John Meadows, who's since passed, Louis Simmons, Westside Barbell, who's since passed, and let me think if there's anybody else. Those are the main guys, Juan Carlos Santana. But being able to experience them coaching me and putting me through stuff and experimenting, those are the people that I've learned from directly. Mind-muscle connection. So working out should be a meditative thing. It should be a meditative thing. You should be able to have the connection to the mind muscle. That comes from my bodybuilding days. That comes from really having Arnold as a mentor, and a role model, I should say, not a mentor. I never spoke with Arnold Schwarzenegger, but pumping iron. I used to watch that every day back in junior year in high school, senior year in high school. And really when I was competing, getting that mind muscle connection. Don't just go through the movement. Right, it should be a meditative experience, almost a spiritual experience. Definitely a mind-body connection when you are training. It's a game of angles. You should be changing the angles as you go. So if you alter, I always explain this, if you had a pile of sand and I'm pouring water from the same angle constantly, it's going to form and make deeper those same rivets and divots and pathways, which is good. But now let's change the angle. Let's start creating new pathways, right? And we're developing the nervous system more. The more you can develop the nervous system, the more strength you can output, which strength is your foundation. After movement, the more muscle you can build if that's your thing. Let me speak quickly about the stress response, because it has to be framed within this. You have ARE, alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. This goes back to the very first book I read on this, Big Beyond Belief. They have a whole section, Hans Selye and the stress response. So alarm, right? So your body, there's a stress coming in. Resistance is when it grows back bigger and stronger. That's what we're after. If you do that too often or you're pushing it too far and doing things improperly, you hit the exhaustion phase. That's where the immune system will come down. Nervous system will start to crash. Hormone system will start to crash. For most people, that's not a concern. Maybe more of a concern if you're a newbie and you go too hard out the gate. Remember, any fake fitness expert can make you sore and make you vomit. That's not the name of the game. That's not coaching. That's ignorance. That's trying to throw junk volume onto a lack of expertise. And many people do this with nutrition too. Cut more calories. You're starving yourself. Cut more calories. You're not eating enough because no. That's why 99% of the people out there in this industry are fake fitness experts. But I digress. Game of angles. You should be working all 3 planes of motion. The frontal plane. So if you had a wall in front of you, the frontal plane is out laterally. Right? We don't work in that range of motion enough, that plane of motion. There should be some lateral movements. Sagittal. If I had the wall on, if I cut me in half, well, I'm looking straight ahead. Okay? So pushing type movements, pulling type movements, lunge type patterns, split squat type patterns. That's your sagittal plane. And transverse, right? The rotary effect, the rotational forces. That is huge. That to me is the most undeveloped part of training that we do need to train. But I believe in that as well as far as a game of angles. Now, anytime you change your hand position, foot position, whatever, you're recruiting the nervous system differently. So that's that. Lastly, grip and mental toughness. So this month at the gym with our programming, which you can get on Train Heroic, but you cannot get that for free unless you're a member, we have a lot of grip training. So your grip is very tied into your nervous system. If you ever look at an anatomy chart, you see how tied in your hands are to your brain and your nervous system, as well as your feet. So first, your grip can save your life, and I have an email coming out about that in a week or two with a real world story, because I always tell people that and they think I'm joking, and I just got a real world story from one of our clients, actually a family member, about how that actually potentially saved her life just last week. But your grip, the more grip strength you have, the more strength and power you can output. So we do a lot of grip training, and that ties into mental toughness training. Some of the stuff doesn't make sense on paper. I don't care what makes sense on paper. Some of the stuff doesn't make sense. Real world application, real world direct knowledge makes sense to me. Mental toughness, you should always be pushing. Remember, your mind is going to want to give up before the body has to give up. Almost always, that is the case. You have to push beyond that. This is the importance of having a coach or having a really good training partner. The rare breed that's like a 1% of 1% can push themselves to this place on their own. Most people cannot, and you can't do this every session anyway. So that is another thing. But that's the main principles, I would say, of the unconventional training approach that we use at Newell Strength, and I'm very excited to dive back into that and re-implement it. So this month the theme was really back to basics, movement quality first. And man, I can tell you, I did a workout yesterday with Coach Alyssa. I was smoked from that workout. It looks easy on the board. And the last thing I'm going to add, which is drives the fake fitness experts insane, these people that would, and it is the same thing with anything really. Novelty is the greatest aphrodisiac. Most people are not aware of how the brain works. If you're not mentally engaged to what you're doing, I don't care how perfect it looks on paper, there's not going to be adherence. So you have to keep it fresh for the brain in some way or another. We could change angles, we could change movements, we could change speed of movement, range of motion, all these types of things. So that is what you have in a nutshell, the unconventional training approach at Newell Strength. You can go to newellstrength.com to get on our email list to find out what we're doing. Got a lot of cool stuff in the works. Some of it just takes a little bit of time to get out to you guys. And you can go to kylenewell.com to get on my private email list. That's what I got for you guys. Hit the share button, drop a question, hit the like button, leave a comment. You guys have a great day. I got to write a few emails before I have to go train Mikey Cortez. Later, guys.